already.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Imagine being tasked with filling the most powerful and important job in the entire world. Imagine being the youngest person to ever fill this position. Imagine following one of the greatest presidential administrations ever and living up to those high standards. Imagine leading the country through the civil rights movement, the Vietnam conflict, a disagreement with Cuba, and a festering disagreement in the Cold War. JFK was tasked with this responsibility when he won the 1960 election over Richard Nixon by a slim margin. Despite the closeness of the election, JFK hoped to build on the power of the Eisenhower administration and bring our country through it. All eyes were on Kennedy, and everybody was curious if he could handle everything that was thrown at him. During his address, Kennedy assured he would strive for the best as our leader and fight to all ends to be the leader at the dawn of the 1960s. Kennedy's speech confirmed trust of the American people, and he proved to be the right leader for the United States of America. John F. Kennedy was the 35th President of the United States, and he led one of the most loved administrations in U.S. history. He led confidently and efficiently throughout his term before being assassinated in 1963. This speech was his inaugural address upon the steps of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. in 1963 on January 20th. We'll now look at an excerpt from the speech.
In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man.
Kennedy's speech was significant at the time because it captured the meaning of the word hope. The American people were drawn in like a child is drawn into a toy store. He gave the American people hope for a new dawn and prosperity for this country for a long time. Today we reflect on what he actually accomplished. He fought for American people, and he dealt with the Cuban Missile Crisis in a cool, calm, and collected manner before it became something we could not control. He also taught to strive bigger and better than ourselves, reaching for the stars, and in his case, reaching for the moon. He followed through on his promises that he made in his address and led our country through one of the, as seemed, the golden age. Kennedy used words to inspire people around the world to be the best version of themselves. The address reassured Americans to entrust him with running our nation and to continue the prosperity of the path we were on and fight anybody in the world that opposes this belief. He showed up that he could live up to the Eisenhower precedent and the founding principles this country was founded upon, and that freedom of any man or woman is worth any sacrifice that is bestowed upon them. His everlasting words represents the American dream coursing through the veins of every one of us and will continue until the day that we die. We'll now jump into his persuasion that he used throughout his speech. Kennedy used ethos, pathos, and logos effectively throughout his speech, and here's some of the examples. He first used ethos, and yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. Quoting God and using God as a credible source creates a connection of faith between our Christian nation, and uses credibility nicely. He then jumps into pathos, which is use of motion. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty. This creates connection with past experiences within people. Creating experience with your past experiences means that you know what you're doing and you know what he's talking about on an emotional level. He then persuades on a logical level, otherwise known as logos. To these people in the huts and villages across the globe, struggling to break the bonds of mass misery, we pledge our best efforts to help them help themselves, for whatever period is required. Not because the communists may be doing it, not because we seek their votes, but because it is right. If a free society cannot help those who are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich. Saying that if America has a problem, most likely other countries that are less fortunate and are not free have that problem, and that America as a free nation should help these countries. Kennedy uses rhetorical devices well throughout his entire speech. I only used a couple of examples to stay under the time limit. First, he uses parallelism. United there is little we cannot do in a host of cooperative ventures. Divided there is little that we can do. Succession of united there is little that we cannot do, and divided there is little we can do, shows a good balance in his speech of the statement throughout the speaking. Then he uses anaphora. All this will not be finished in the first 100 days, nor will it be finished in the first 1,000 days, nor in the life of this administration, nor even perhaps in the life of this planet. But let us begin. Repetition shows the importance of this goal, and that should be a constant working goal and not something that should just end. He then uses anastrophe. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. This is the most important phrase throughout his entire speech, and it gets his idea across of self-sufficiency and freedom by rearranging the words in an effective way. In conclusion, John F. Kennedy instilled confidence in the American people by showing them he was capable of leading our country, showing why he was the right person to be the next president of the United States and to leave an example for the next generations to live by. Thank you.